So when you think about the Muslims, you have Sunni Muslims, which is Saudi Arabia would be a good example of the Sunni Muslim. And then the Shia Muslim is Iran. If Saudi Arabia were Shia Muslim, they would never even be talking about a normalization agreement with Israel. But Shia Muslim, Iran, the Shia, they call this male descendant of the Prophet Muhammad imams, the male descendants, imams. And they ascribe to them as these quasi-divine status, or they're coming messiahs, or, well, the quasi-divine status. And Hussein, who was killed at Karbala by Yazid, he was the third imam. His son and grandson were the fourth and fifth imams. At the end of his life, there is at the end of this line of these imams, there's the 12th imam, who is named Muhammad. So some call him the Mahdi, the divinely guided one. So he was born in supposedly 869, the only son of the 11th imam. In 874, he disappeared without a trace, and bringing Muhammad's lineage to an end. And so in Shia mythology, now you heard the word mythology there, not fact, but in Shia mythology, however, the 12th imam survived. So the Shia believe that he merely withdrew from public view when he was 5, and that he will emerge from his occultation in order to liberate the world from evil. So, according to Shia tradition, legitimate Islamic rule can only be established following the 12th imam's reappearance. Okay. So, Ayatollah Khomeini, Khomeini had, he had no intention of waiting. So, he vested the myth with an entirely new sense when he comes on the scene. The 12th imam will emerge only when the believers have vanquished evil. To speed up the Mahdi's return, Muslims had to shake off their torpor and fight. So, this is the apocalyptic ideology driving Iran. That to quicken the coming of their Messiah figure, the Mahdi, or this 12th imam, that they need to destroy Israel and the United States. The mullahs, they believe that it's their obligation. It's not just to prepare for the apocalypse, but it's to instigate it. And this is what makes them so exceptionally dangerous. And note well that these are the people with whom the Obama-Biden axis has aligned themselves, and the ones whom they've put on the brink of acquiring a nuclear weapon. Now, that's why I'm still trying to figure out why they would do this, unless they just could care less about Israel and trying to destroy the United States, or they're trying to force Israel into something. But still, it makes zero sense, but this is what's happening. This is a fact. So, President Raisi, the guy killed in the helicopter crash, which the mullah's pick he was a hardliner, came from squarely within this tradition. And while real political power rests with the mullahs, Raisi was their living symbol, reflecting both their fanaticism and their bloodlust. Okay? So given Raisi's importance as a figurehead, the fact that his helicopter went down in this mountainous terrain, and taking his foreign minister with him, it matters a great deal, doesn't it? Because of, remember, Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. Abraham, in other words, he could be saying today to Israel, Israel, I'm going to bless them that bless you, and I'm going to curse them that curse you. So it's certainly possible that this was an accident. I get it, and I admit that. It could have just been an accident. I saw pictures of it. It was heavy, heavy, heavy fog with just almost no visibility. Why they were out there, I have no idea. So it certainly could have been an accident. However, if it were indeed the hand of God, if Iran and her allies continue to fund Israel's destruction, Israel's enemies might want to take note, because God is not going to let anything happen to Israel. I wish people were more biblically literate. Because God said in Genesis 12:3, Abraham, I'm going to bless them that bless you, and I'm going to curse them that curse you. And that was an everlasting promise to Abraham. Now, again, when Israel went off into idolatry and things like that and backslid, God exiled them. But then he would bring them back, and then they would be exiled again, and then he would bring them back when they backslid. And so now Israel's there today, and Israel's not leaving ever again. But because these people don't understand the Bible, folks, the Bible's the best history book that's ever been written. And much better than Webster's or whoever, I mean, you know, World Book Encyclopedia. Now, come on. They're constantly rewriting that stuff. The Bible said, thy word, O God, is forever settled in heaven. So I'm going to go with the Bible and say, hands off Israel, folks. I mean, if they sin and things happen, let God deal with them. I'm not going to deal with them. But I am going to try to win a lot of them, right? Jews and Gentiles, whatever. To me, the Bible says God's no respecter of persons. And so, but God did give Abraham a promise about that land over there, and it's still valid today. So, Israel's enemies would do good to pay attention to some of this stuff. So the Times of Israel, they published an article. Ibrahim Raisi was 63, and he was called the Butcher of Tehran. And Ayatollah Khomeini, he was an Ayatollah Khomeini protege when he died in this helicopter crash yesterday. Well, put some excerpts from this article. It was a really good article because I want you to understand about Ibrahim Raisi and that how God viewed this individual who was wanting to destroy Israel. He was the potential successor to the supreme leader who oversaw a wave of executions in 1988. He was a murderer. And as president, he led a bloody repression of Masha Amini protests back in 2022. And then, of course, he presided over the missile attack on Israel back in April, just about a little over a month ago. So, he died, obviously, in a helicopter crash yesterday, and he was nicknamed the Butcher of Tehran for his role in he oversaw a mass executions of thousands back in 1988, and they were political dissidents. They were going around in prisons. Hey, do you pray? Do you believe in God? Blah, blah, blah. If they gave him the wrong answer, to the gallows. They hung him. And he led the country under Ayatollah Khomeini as it enriched uranium near weapons-grade levels and launched a major drone and missile attack on Israel. So the Israel-Hamas war, which erupted back when we were in Israel on October 7th, that was when the Iranian-backed Hamas terror group launched its devastating massacre in southern Israel communities, murdered about 1,200 people, took over 250 hostages, and the Islamic Republic's other proxies have also been attacking Israel in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza since the resulting war began. What are they indoctrinated with to get them to do that? Is it just, hey, let's all get together and just wipe out Israel? No, it's the Mahdi doctrine. It's their coming Messiah, the 12th Imam. We've got to destroy this entity so our Messiah figure can come back to the earth and set everything right and bring peace and justice, and will implement the Shiite version of Sharia law globally. They have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps has indoctrinated all these terrorist proxies that this is your mindset. This is from the time they're born. Here's what we're going to destroy Israel. There's going to be a war of attrition. They start to sign an agreement with Saudi Arabia, a normalization agreement. Hey, Hamas, we're giving you the green light. Go in. It's a terrorist proxy war. And then back in April, they fired off them missiles and drones and things as the first direct attack from Iran. And of course, many believe that that was just a fact-finding mission to see how everybody would react, how long it took for missiles to get there, all kinds of different things. So, A day after the October 7th invasion, Raisi held the legitimate defense of the Palestinian nation. And he met with leaders of the terror groups. He was happy about what happened, the killing of all the Jews. The most Jews killed in one day since the Holocaust. The worst terrorist attack that Israel's ever experienced. And so Raisi repeatedly praised Hamas and threatened Israel's annihilation, but denied Tehran had a direct role in the onslaught. Now remember, God told Abraham, I'm going to bless them that bless you, and I'm going to curse them that curses you. So keep this in the back of your mind as I'm going through all of this. God was watching Ibrahim Raisi. A lot of people like to take God out of the equation. You absolutely cannot do that. That's the biggest mistake people could make. To most people, think about this, to most people, God isn't even on their radar. They might pray over a Thanksgiving meal, or say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, one nation under God, that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about in a daily life, studying the Word of God and having God on my radar. God, I want to do what you want me to do. I want to be Spirit-led. I'm praying to you every day. I'm serving you. I'm reading your Word. I'm going to church. The vast majority of people, that's simply not happening. God's not on their radar. But I'm telling you, these world leaders, the leaders of these nations, all these different things, it would do good. It would be really good idea if you would pay attention to what God wants. And even us, all of us individuals. What does God want? A lot of people don't care. It's what do I want? I don't care what I want. I want to know what He wants. I want Him to be happy because I love Him. He died for me. I'm going to spend eternity with Him. And if He's happy, I'm happy. And if my wife's happy, I'm happy. Right? And so, but as I'm going through some of this material, these people they're not paying attention to God. They're paying attention to Satan is what they're doing. Satan's driving most of this. So when an alleged Israeli strike killed this senior Iranian official, member back in, it was in April, at that Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps officers in the Iran's embassy up near Damascus, Tehran launched an extraordinary direct attack on Israel, and they had hundreds of drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. They were all fired at Israel. I was up at Jim Bakker's ministry when it happened. And I think me and Doug and Vince and my wife and Tina and all of us were up there. Well, Israel, the U.S. and its allies, when they shot this from Iran towards Israel, they shot down the projectiles. But it showed just how much the years-long shadow war between Iran and Israel had boiled. So what was this all about? One of the principal drivers behind all of this was Ibrahim Raisi, the president of Iran. After this horrific attack on October 7th, he was praising Hamas. What kind of a normal, human, sane individual could do that? I would say that a normal, sane individual doesn't have the capability of doing something like that. But God was watching. And certainly the helicopter crash could have been an accident. I get it. But I'm going to bless them that bless you, Abraham, and I'm going to curse them that curse you. Welcome back, everybody. And, I told you the stage is being set for the eventual World War III, but also the Great Tribulation and the Battle of Armageddon, when the world is going to come against Israel. The Bible says when Satan is bound to the earth after the war in heaven, Revelation 12, that he persecutes the woman. In that chapter, Revelation 12, the woman with 12 stars around her head is Israel. Satan has always been focused on Israel. He's been fighting God for Jerusalem throughout all the millennia. So he has, it's not stopped, right? And so the stage is being set for all this, the mindset of the international community, anti-Semitic. The American Thinker, they wrote a great article over the weekend. The anti-Semitic, immoral, evil international criminal court comes for Israel. And I pulled a few excerpts from this article. I want you to hear that because of what's going on right now. Because the International Criminal Court, another international institution designed to govern the planet. And the International Criminal Court, they lumped Sinwar, who's over Hamas, and Benjamin Netanyahu in the same category of war criminals. And they're coming for both of them. And there's hundreds of articles on this, but to say that this is an act of moral inversion, it doesn't even come close to describing what happens here, what's happening here, except to say that we're seeing the left's desire to outlaw Israel, really. And again, this is setting the stage for the Great Tribulation and the Battle of Armageddon. The International Criminal Court, or the ICC, let's just shorten it, was established in 2002 at a UN General Assembly vote called the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And its ostensible purpose was to address crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Well, early on, it was clearly intended to make Israel a war criminal because the founding UN treaty made it an actionable crime to transfer a population into occupied territory. And that openly targets Israel's housing developments that are out in Judea and Samaria, or modern-day Gaza. However, despite being a UN-created organ, the ICC does not bind all UN nations. Instead, it only binds states that are signed on to it. The member states are a rogues gallery of crackpot and openly socialist and anti-Semitic countries. Well, these are the countries that are going to invade Israel before this thing's all over with. And so Bill Clinton, he refused to submit the treaty to the Senate. And he also recommended against America's ever becoming a part of the organization because it was inherently anti-American and anti-Israel. And it challenged America's sovereignty. Bill Clinton, a Democrat. Well, Obama didn't try to ratify the treaty, but his administration, unsurprisingly, periodically supported the ICC's decisions. Well, Trump, obviously, he went the other way. He sanctioned the organization, but naturally, Joe Biden came in and lifted those sanctions. So now, I laugh because it's almost kind of laughable at this point. I don't want to talk about Biden today, but again, that's another thing I can't fully wrap my head around, other than the fact that he's just trying to destroy America and annihilate Israel as one of our allies. Moving on. So this anti-American, anti-Semitic group, ICC, has issued an arrest warrant for both Netanyahu and Sinwar, who's over Hamas. So the International Criminal Court announced Monday that it was seeking arrest warrants for Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Hamas leader Sinwar on war crimes charges. The charges are tied to October 7th, the terror attacks on Israel and the subsequent war in Gaza. And the court's chief prosecutor, his name is Karim Khan, he said that in a statement today. So I want to tell you what I'm trying to do is I have a friend of mine who was a soldier in the IDF that went into Gaza almost day one and fought all the way down through to Rafah. I'm trying to set up a interview with him to kind of clear up some of the false narratives that you are being told in the news. If he's allowed, I'm going to interview him sometime in the very near future here on the program, if he's allowed. This is very important because he already told me some things he can't talk about. Well, those are some of the things I think you should know about. And so he told me, he said, I can't answer that. But there are some things that we could talk about, and we're putting a list of things together and going back and forth. But if he can, we're going to do that because you guys need to know all the false narratives that are being talked about in the news. Certainly, this warrant from the ICC is one of them. And there are warrants that are being sought for Israel's defense minister, Gallant, and 2 top Hamas leaders. So, the charges against Hamas. Now listen to this. This is so crazy. The charges against Hamas is extermination, murder, torture, rape, and taking hostages, and all as war crimes and crimes against humanity. Then they come after, they want a warrant for Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu's and Minister of Defense Gallant. They're accused of crimes of causing extermination, causing starvation as a method of war, including the denial of humanitarian relief supplies. I'm telling you, this is so false. And number three, deliberately targeting civilians in the conflict. Now, that's one of the things that I want my soldier friend. I'll tell you his name when he's getting ready to come on the air. Once I figure out if he's allowed, once he finds out. But if that's one of the things I want him to clear up, because he was fighting all the way down through there, and I'll allow him to kind of tell you as much as he can when he comes on the air. So if this comes to fruition, it's possible that Netanyahu and Gallant would be at risk of arrest if they leave Israel. Because remember, they're not signed on to the Rome Statute at this point, the ICC. So the indictment, of course, it's totally ludicrous. I mean, let's just look at a few facts. So Israel withdrew entirely from Gaza in 2005 under Ariel Sharon. It's not an occupied territory, number one. Number two, in the years since then, Hamas has received billions of dollars in foreign aid. Hamas has used the money to enrich its leaders, build hundreds of miles of tunnels underneath Gaza, which are used to store weapons and to transport troops and to invade. In some of the tunnels reach over into Israel and to come in and invade Israel. I mean, this is in addition to its using schools, hospitals, apartments as barracks and weapons storage facilities. Schools and hospitals. Think about that. They use Palestinians as human shields. Gaza is a giant military encampment, with civilians as an integral part of its defense system. Israel's built for war. Let's just face it. It created the Iron Dome to protect its citizens, along with an infrastructure of early warning systems and shelters. But unless they're defending Israel, when has Israel ever went over and invaded Jordan or Egypt or to the south or Lebanon or Syria? If they haven't been attacked, they don't go on and try to take Lebanese people and bring them back. And no, that's not Israel. Israel just wants to be left alone. Let's face it. This is the fact. I've been there many, many times. I know I have many, many friends over there, and all they want to do is be left alone. Well, on October 7th, over 4,000 Hamas troops invaded Israel. They did not attack military targets. Instead, they attacked civilians at a music festival and civilians in their own homes. And in a few hours, they slaughtered over 1,200 Israeli-based civilians. And it made a particular effort to torture the women and children to death. Inhumane behavior. But in addition, they seized over 200 hostages. Some of them were Americans, and most have since been murdered. And since October 7th, Hamas has aimed tens of thousands of rockets at Israel's civilian centers. Israel's defense systems are the only reason that they haven't been mass civilian casualties. I was over there. I remember several times when the sirens would go off and you would hear them Iron Dome missile defense systems deploy to go up and hit rockets in the air. That happened while I was in downtown Jerusalem, many times. And quite the unnerving situation, I will just tell you. I knew God had his hands upon us. I knew we were safe, but still crazy to hear all that stuff go flying off through the air and those bombs hitting up there. Well, in the face of a massive murderous attack on sovereign territory, Israel did exactly what the United States did after 9/11. It went to war against its enemy. And the enemy is Hamas, a political and military organization. Israel has been waging that urban warfare against Hamas and has done so with exquisite care for civilians in Gaza. Israel is one of the most humanitarian militaries, if not the most humanitarian military on the planet. It has abandoned the element of surprise by giving advance warning to enable civilians to be able to escape. Okay? You understand, in wartime, the element of surprise. They abandoned that during this Gaza, the Gaza war. And they would call and send text ahead and say, we're going to bomb this. Civilians, get out. They dropped pamphlets from the sky, all kinds of things, to warn civilians to leave. Did Hamas do that? Absolutely not. They invaded and went over and killed a bunch of people and took a bunch of hostages. So Israel put its own troops at risk in battle situations to protect civilians. They provided medical treatment for civilians. They shipped tons of food and medical supplies to civilians, which, of course, the vast majority of whom support Hamas, they give it aid and comfort, right? Hamas took most of it. Well, considering that this is urban warfare and that Hamas has deliberately made its civilians part of its military defense system, few civilians have died as a result of Israel's actions. Hamas, of course, they generated grossly exaggerated civilian mortality numbers, and even with those numbers, there was no doubt that Israel had done an extraordinary job of protecting enemy civilians. Now, I have more that I can go through. It's the end of the program, but the thing is, I'm going to try to have my friend on, if he is allowed by the IDF, to come and answer a few questions. I'll try to have him on the program here to clear some of this up, because the narratives you guys are being told in the news, it's so bad. So much of a false narrative. They're trying to make Israel look out like Netanyahu's a murderer, and that Gallant, the defense minister of Israel, is a murderer. And the ICC, which is very anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, as is the United Nations and all the rest of them, the WHO, they're trying, the Khan, one of the prosecutors of that, is hoping to get warrants to come after Netanyahu and Gallant. And they're putting them in the same category as Sinwar, who's over Hamas. But the whole mindset I want you to have from today's program is that the stage is being set for the World War III, for the Great Tribulation, for the Battle of Armageddon. The stage is being set for this, folks, right now. The international community against Israel. But the thing is, God said, Abraham, I'm going to bless them that bless you, and I'm going to curse them that curses you. Folks, I'm going to stand with Israel. I'll stand with the people of Israel, and I'm going to try to win as many to God as I can in Jesus' name.